Assalamu alaikum. In a prior segment, we talked about La ilaha illallah, the first tenet of the declaration of Islam. And we said that it means there is no deity except Allah. We talked about its impact on helping us avoid oppressing others, cheating others, and so on and so forth. And also violating the values that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained for us. We also talked about the need for constant self-examination in order to purify ourselves. Today we're going to dive a little bit deeper and we're going to try to discover how some of the hidden idols inside us, in other words, the deities that we worship inside us, can be acting upon our behaviors and our decisions without our knowing. So therefore, we're going to focus today on fears and attachments. Attachments are the types of tendencies that you have that cause you to do things again and again, and sometimes without your being aware of them. That's why they're called hidden idols. Fears act in a very similar way. But before we start, I want to share with you a very interesting story. If you study the situation with circuses, circus with animals and so on, they have trained elephants. The obvious question is, how can they control them or keep them in cages or move them around from city to city without these elephants going rogue on them and becoming violent and refusing the orders? And of course, training since youth, right? But there's a very interesting technique that these trainers use with elephants. They bring the baby elephant and they chain the leg of that baby elephant to a very hard chain in the ground such that the elephant cannot escape it. And then after trying for so many times and for several days, the baby elephant, reluctantly start giving up trying. And eventually the trainers simply replace the chain with a simple rope. And when the elephant, after he grows up even tries to tug at that rope, they simply quit trying. They don't try to escape after that point. They're locked mentally into what's called a paradigm. That paradigm affects how they decide, affects how they behave, affects what they consider right and wrong or possible and impossible. The Quran gives us a hint at a similar aspect in the story of Prophet Yusuf, chapter 12, verse 58. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes a situation that long after Yusuf was kidnapped and sold into slavery and grew older and became in charge of a certain government post in Egypt, in Misr, his brothers eventually came to the market where he was and they entered into Yusuf's place. And the Quran describes it in a very beautiful way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وجاء إخوة يوسف فدخلوا عليه فعرفهم وهم له منكرون. They entered into his place. He recognized them, but they were incapable of recognizing him. They were simply not able to fathom that this was Yusuf in front of them. Even in the very next verse, verse 59, then he asked them to bring a younger brother of theirs. They still did not recognize him. That's the power of a paradigm. It literally locks your thinking into acting in certain ways or making certain beliefs or following certain beliefs without you're aware that they're there, such as attachments. Attachments are a powerful paradigm that lock your mental abilities to see and understand and comprehend and therefore make decisions. Idols are hidden using these paradigms. So the hidden idols are what psychologists call paradigms. These idols live inside you without asking your permission. And most of the time you're not even aware they're there. So you end up assigning priorities to your personal interests, thinking that's the right thing to do, instead of really following the values that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enjoined us to understand and to practice in our life. So the Quran gives us a beautiful example about one such attachment. Let's imagine that one of us undergoes a severe injustice of some sort. Something is stolen from that person, or he's oppressed in some way, or caused some harm in some way, and then we develop this anger, and we develop this desire for revenge, right? And we could taste it. It's that anger, that deep feeling that I want to take my anger out on the perpetrator, the person who caused such injustice. The Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us something else, a different value, a higher value, a more noble value, a way to recognize that hidden idol and to overcome it. Listen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ لِلَّهِ شُهَدَاءَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَنْ لَا تَعْدِلُوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believe, be upright, testifying injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And let not the oppression of people be the cause for you to commit injustice against these same people. In other words, some of those people who have committed injustice against you, let not that be the cause to cause you to commit injustice against them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue, be just, i'dilu, be just, it is closer to piety. So idols include all sorts of things, but importantly, attachments to family, attachments to a job, attachment to a lifestyle, attachment to the desire to collect and accumulate money way beyond my needs, attachment to hoard, attachment to deprive, all sorts of attachments. Tastes, things I like to eat, things I like to do, things I don't want to lose because I'm attached to all sorts of material things. All of these attachments could become hidden idols that control and motivate you to move in the wrong direction, away from true submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore we have to watch out. On the flip side of the same coin, fears. Fears are also hidden idols. And fears are very dangerous because some of the fears cause us to lie to protect ourselves, to lie to cover up for some of the mistakes we have committed. One of the exercises I used to do in training, when I used to train in Islamic leadership or strategy or creative thinking, there was always an exercise I used to include in my training seminars. And that exercise is called I am sorry. And I usually start with it very early on in the first day of that training seminar. I ask individuals, all the people who attend, to stand up and look around them and go around the room to as many people as possible and say sincerely, I am sorry, to shake their hand, to hug them if they can, to beg for apology, to say I'm sorry. That specific exercise helps us develop humility, helps us develop the recognition that we're capable of making mistakes. And therefore, it helps us overcome the hidden idol that could be a fear that we want to overcome. Other fears could help us become weak, to choose weakness instead of courage. And thus we accept injustices and we allow bullies to continue doing what they do. Other fears help us pretend that we're always perfect. There's nothing wrong with me. And thus we avoid developing ourselves. We avoid growing and improving and becoming better human beings. All of these things are motivated by fears. Hidden idols drive our decisions and control our behaviors. They're paradigms that lock our way of thinking, lock our ways of seeing the truth, and therefore we don't recognize the truth and we don't act according to the truth. And therefore we're in violation of La ilaha illallah. Let there be no deity except Allah. In the Quran, in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا أُولَئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ أُولَئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this surah, verse 179 of Surah Al-A'raf, they have hearts with which they cannot reflect. They have eyes with which they cannot see. They have ears with which they cannot hear. These people are like cattle. Nay, they're worse than cattle. These people are the absent-minded. They're not reflecting, they're not analyzing, they're not understanding who they really are. Tell me what your attachments are, I'll tell you what your idols are. I'll tell you what you constantly seek, what you consider success in this life, and I tell you how you are violating La ilaha illallah. So in conclusion, I ask you, can you afford to live in such dark prison of hidden idols? Can you afford to live without truly understanding what the Quran teaches us? La ilaha illallah. Let there be no deity except Allah. Thank you for watching.